Just give her a few more minutes. Just waiting for a few more people and we'll be ready to go. Second. We're just dealing with one small technical difficulty and we will be there. Give me 1 second.
Hello, Ariel, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Mara.
Hi. Hello to everyone who is listening. We're just going through some technical checks, which seems to be standard these days. So thank you for your patience ahead of time. Ariel, when you go to panelists, you see me and you see a button that says more.
Yeah.
What happens when you click that button?
So it says to ask to start video, which I've been pressing, but it's not
There
allowed.
we go. It just now popped up. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All
Yay!
right. Now, all right. So we're good
We are
to
all
go.
we're all becoming
All
tech
right.
gurus. I just went through the same exact thing a few days ago with the podcast taping. It was much more complicated, but we figured it out.
Okay, so thank you. So everybody, thank you for being here. I'm going to share my screen. Before we start, I'm going to just do a little bit of introductions. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to introduce Fair Meals, as well as our moderator for tonight, Mara Schiavocampo. So Mara, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. This is our first event as a nonprofit. So I'm really excited and really looking forward to a really nice evening talking about, things that I'm really passionate about, which is nutrition and more specifically, easy, healthy, and affordable nutrition. So being able to do that tonight is really great, and you being here is great. So I am going to share my screen with everybody. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to just present. And okay, so again, everybody, thank you for being here. Everybody hears me. I guess, Mara, you're the only one that can answer that.
Yes,
you hear me okay?
Hear you.
Okay,
thumbs
great.
Up.
Okay, so again, everybody, thank you for being here. This is webinar number 1 of a 3-part series, which we hope to then continue, down the road. So tonight we're going to kind of set the foundation for healthy eat for healthy and affordable shopping lists? How can we set that foundation for easy, healthy, and affordable meal preparations? And obviously, that's getting these groceries into our homes, right? So we want to really find the best way to do this without compromising nutrition, and we obviously want to prioritize affordability as well. So a little bit about me. So I founded Fair Meals a little less than a year ago, really to offer nutritional guidance and easy recipes to empower families to eat well on a budget. I've always had a passion for community, and I think that's really what inspired me to become a registered dietitian, and definitely what kickstarted, what was the driving force behind me starting Fair Meals as well. So that's really what enabled me to create this practical and free educational resource, which is Fair Meals, which is what it's now become now that we are a nonprofit organization. So more personally about myself, I have a master's in science from nutrition in nutrition and dietetics from NYU, and I'm a registered dietitian. So I'm just going to quickly go through the difference between a nutritionist and a registered dietitian because I get this question all the time. So I want to kind of just let you know why you're here, why you're listening to me, and what makes registered dietitians food experts. So a nutritionist, really anybody can call themselves a nutritionist. You can take one course in nutrition, you can take a lot of extensive courses in nutrition, but not really do any sort of specific types of courses and call yourself a nutritionist. Whereas a registered dietitian, there are tons of required science-based classes, nutrition science-based classes to take. We need to then complete about a year-long dietetic internship, which will then enable us to take a board registered exam that we need to pass to become a registered dietitian. So all of that is what makes us food experts. Also, I am a mom, I'm a wife, so I do know how difficult, how time-consuming creating healthy meals can be. So I really wanted to create this resource to help families like mine really understand that it does not need to be such a lengthy process. It does not need to be expensive, and we can, in fact, feed our families healthy in a convenient way. So about Fair Meals, so I've mentioned it is a free online platform offering families healthy, simple, and affordable meal solutions. Our mission, as I've mentioned, previously, is to really empower families with the nutrition education, step-by-step recipes, budget planning to make meals healthy, easy, and affordable. And our vision is to just help combat America's chronic disease crisis by making healthy food an option for every family. We're seeing so many chronic diseases happening in our younger population, such as type 2 diabetes, which is coming, unfortunately, from the obesity crisis that we're seeing, in children and in adults. So really by showing families and empowering them that they can, in fact, have this can in fact make healthy food and this can be an option for them is really, we're just hoping to help, combat this issue that unfortunately we're dealing with in our country today. And now a little bit about Mara. So Mara, again, thank you for being here. She has a very extensive and impressive background. She's a 4-time Emmy award-winning TV journalist, one of the highest charting Black podcasters in the US, a content creator, a best-selling author, currently a senior investigative correspondent for the Dr. Oz Show, executive producer and host of her own podcast, which is called The Trend Reporter. She's worked previously as a correspondent for The Today Show and for Good Morning America, has appeared on The View, The Chew, The Oprah Winfrey Show, so very, very cool things. And, I figured our interests really aligned because she is a wellness enthusiast. She did write a memoir called Inspired, which documents her journey of losing 90 pounds after the birth of her first child. And she is a wife and a mom to 2 adorable kids and one fur baby. So Amara, again, thank you for being here. Before I hand over the mic to you, I want to just talk to you about tonight's agenda, and then it's all yours. So we're going to learn some tips and tricks to save money without compromising nutrition. As I've mentioned, nutrition is always of utmost importance. We want to learn how to prioritize health, ease, and affordability while keeping this nutrition. We want to strategize methods of shopping, and then there are some personalized shopping lists. I will go through to you what I find what's most important to me. And I always like to end with a Q&A session because I think it's a great way to discuss anything I may have forgotten and just a good way to learn from each other. So again, now Mara.
Well, Ariel, thank you. And thank you for including me in this. Congratulations on your first event. And I will say to everyone who is here attending, you really are genuinely in for a treat because I've seen the presentation and there's so much useful, good information here. And that's what I think is so fantastic about what Fair Meals is doing. A lot of people talk about practical information and saving tips, and some people do deliver, but this really delivers. It is practical, it is easy, it is nutritious. You have taken the hardest part of family life, which is meal planning, and you have made it simple. So thank you for doing all that hard work for us and now sharing all of your hard work with us. So just a message to everybody who's listening, please submit questions throughout. We may sprinkle a few in if we find that we're doing well on time. Otherwise, we'll do them at the end with the Q&A. We do have time budgeted at the end for questions. So please keep those coming because I know that Ariel is very eager to answer whatever it is that's on your mind. And we already have a few that were submitted in advance. So I'm looking forward to getting to that. So Ariel, if you're ready, we'll just dive right in.
Yeah,
ready to go?
I'm ready. Yeah.
Okay, so this is actually one of my favorite tips. Frozen is fabulous. Why is frozen fabulous?
Yeah, so there are so many misconceptions out there that, we only want fresh produce. I am a huge fan of frozen. There are tons of frozen produce staples in my house. And I will go through some of those with you and why I like to have them. So just look at the details, right? So they're lower in price. They really have the same nutrients. And the reason they really do have the same nutrients for the most part is that they freeze these produce at peak ripeness. So we're getting that same nutrition profile that we're getting for the most part with fresh produce. It obviously saves refrigerator space, obviously not saving freezer space, but I think most people's priority is their refrigerators, and they come in, like plastic packages, so it's easy to store in our freezers, and they're really just as delicious, and they're great to use in soups, in stews, in smoothies, salads, stir fries, pasta dishes, and I like to talk about those specific, I guess, meals or whatever you want to call them, because they're great vehicles for loading in nutrients, right? They're great vehicles for packing in all of these vegetables, as well as other nutrients, which are, filled with tons of great, fiber and other vitamins and minerals that are going to be really, really essential for all of us. So looking at the shopping list to my right over there, you have to kind of take what will work for you. What is something what's important to your family, right? To my family, things that I always have in my freezer are broccoli, cauliflower, edamame, peas, as well as berries. So broccoli and cauliflower, we use all the time. We roast it, we take it, I'm very big in planning the proteins for the week, but not so much the side dishes. So, one night I don't make it to the grocery store, or I don't have anything in my refrigerator, I take out a bag of frozen broccoli or frozen cauliflower, roasted in the oven. It's delicious, it's nutritious, it's easy. Cauliflower is also really, really great for soups and smoothies. It actually creates a really, really creamy consistency. And also some people don't really like adding some of the green vegetables into their smoothies because they have those green bits and pieces. So it's just adding a little bit more of a consistent coloring. And again, it adds that creaminess. And then peas. Peas is something I didn't always keep on hand. I should also say corn. Peas and corn were two ways I taught my son actually how to use his pincer grasp. A lot of people use Cheerios, and that's, if for those of you who don't know what that is, it's for them learning to pick up food between their two fingers. So that I'm always looking for ways to do things in the most nutritious way possible. So peas were, that's how I taught him how to do that. And he just loves peas. So I always have that on hand. Another thing I love to have peas and corn for is if we do have a soup or a chicken soup or any sort of soup that's a little bit warm, we, instead of putting ice in there or water in there to dilute the flavor, we can put some of those vegetables in there, and that acts and serves as that ice that will cool down the soup, but will not dilute the flavor, and will also get some more vegetables in there. So again, we're elevating that nutrition profile. And then berries and mango, things like that, I like to have on hand for smoothies. But again, take a look at this shopping list and see what works for your family. What are some things that your family will enjoy, and what works for you.
That is so smart. The idea of putting frozen vegetables to cool something down. And I was
Yeah.
even thinking like you could put some fruit in like a hot chocolate or tea to cool it down, because I do use ice when I'm giving my kids something hot. And that's such a great alternative.
Yeah.
Question about when you prepare foods with the frozen vegetables, because you have this recipe for the roasted broccoli. Is that something that we can turn to? Because I would love to ask you about how you're cooking these. So do you thaw or defrost in any way first, or do you just throw this right into the oven?
So it really depends. So if I have a large cookie sheet, if you have a large cookie sheet, you actually don't really need to defrost, because they won't steam. You just have to spread them apart nicely so that the water doesn't come together and steam the vegetable. So you don't really need to do that if you have a large enough cookie sheet. If you have something a little bit smaller, I do recommend thawing that and kind of squeezing out some of that excess water to take out some of that water, so that the vegetables don't steam and they really do become roasted.
So can you talk us through this recipe? Because this looks like too good to be true. It looks like it takes about 2 seconds to prepare, and look how delicious it looks.
It does. It really takes 2 seconds. I mean, listen, one of the most annoying parts of getting broccoli and cauliflower, I would say, is, cutting it off of the stems, right? Yeah. So having something that we can really throw into a cookie sheet or throwing into a pan and throwing in the oven is, like you said, it's too good to be true. But not only that, there's tons of great nutrients. It's super easy. We're throwing in some olive oil, some whatever spices you want, salt, pepper, garlic powder. You can put in anything you really want. And again, it's delicious, it's easy, and we're getting tons of nutrients. We're getting fiber, we're getting vitamin C, which is something I think everybody's looking for a little bit more nowadays. So it really is that easy.
I love it. Okay, so this one is definitely going on my list to help me with my weekly meal prep. So I would love now to turn to canned, which, similar to frozen, I feel like has a little bit of an association that people think it's not as good as fresh, but you have really good examples of the things that work well as canned goods.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, there is this misconception, or there is some sort of stigma, let's call it, about cans. So I'm going to be very honest with you, and I'm going to give my opinion, and there are definitely differing opinions about this. My opinion is that I wouldn't use canned for everything. I would sooner use frozen if we couldn't have the fresh option, or even not having the fresh option. Frozen's a great option, as mentioned before. But there are certain products that I 100% recommend having on hand. They're great options. They're great things to have on hand. Like, they are low. Cans are definitely lower in price. We do get similar nutrients in a lot of these products. They're shelf stable, so they last a long time, which is really, really important. Especially nowadays when we don't want to be going into, grocery stores for no reason. And they're just as delicious, and we can really use them the same way that we're using, the frozen vegetables in soups, in stews, sauces, salads, stir fries, side dishes, really using it the same way. So to my right, we have the shopping list, right? You can take a look through and see these are definitely things I recommend. One more thing that's not on here that I do recommend are olives. We do a lot of canned olives in my house. Again, they're good snacks. They have, really good, it's a healthy fat. So it's a great thing also to have on hand. But some things I always have on hand here are chickpeas. We do roasted chickpeas a lot as a snack, as a salad topper, as a soup topper. It's a great vehicle, as I've mentioned before. It's a great vehicle for kind of putting a bunch of different spices together and making it a little bit funky and fun. So we like to do that here. I also always have kidney beans, always have tuna and salmon. Tuna and salmon are just great proteins to have on hand because, they're easy. Like I said, they're shelf stable and they're great. I'm going to use this word a lot, but they're great vehicles for packing in a ton of things. And on the next slide, you'll see a recipe for a tuna salad, which we can use for salmon. But I do have actually on the Fair Meals website a salmon patty recipe that uses canned salmon rather, and you can substitute that with tuna. So like I said, I have the chickpeas, I have the kidney beans, I have the tuna and the salmon, and then peaches. So peaches, we like to use as a snack in my house. My son loves them. It was a great way when he was younger to teach him to hold foods. The shape of the canned peaches is nice for a younger kid to be able to hold and grasp really nicely because it's thick and it kind of like cusps their hands a little bit. So it's definitely, those are definitely my go-tos, I would say. But, again, take a look at the shopping list, see what works for you, see what works for your family. And it's a really great option for sure. So.
There are a couple questions here directly about
Sure.
cans, which I would love to address while we're talking about canned goods. The first, is it true that you shouldn't use dented canned goods?
Yeah, I would not use dented canned goods for sure. Sometimes you find that, and I would probably recommend just getting rid of that. But yes, good question. I would not use dented cans.
And the other one is,
if you buy it in the supermarket and it's dented, don't use it. If it's dented in your home, it's more likely than not you dented it somehow. So that's probably a little bit better, but I would not go and buy a dented can.
Okay. And what's the risk with the dented cans?
I'm not sure.
It's just
it's
damaged and it's
I'm
not,
not
yeah,
sure.
we don't want
It's
any damaged food.
Don't want to mess with that. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I can get back to you on that.
Okay. This next one is about canned items and sodium. So how do you make sure that you're not getting canned goods that have too much sodium in them?
Great point. And I'm happy somebody asked that because I wanted to bring that up. So that's a really good point. Thanks for reminding me. So they do make lower reduced sodiums, low in sodium options. If you can find that in your grocery store, then go ahead and get that. If you can't, it's not a problem. And this goes also with fruit. A lot of them come in syrup or they come in 100% fruit juice, which still do have added sugars that are unnecessary. We don't need that. So just take a strainer and wash it off. And you'll take a lot of that sodium, a lot of that syrup or that juice off that we don't really want in there. But very good question.
And you actually answered the next question, which is, should you rinse canned food? Is that something you suggest just across the board? Or
Yes.
is it if you're trying to remove some kind of syrup covering?
It's more for removing the syrup. Yes. Yes.
Got it.
That
Okay.
is why people do it. People may think they're doing it for other reasons, but the real reason behind that is to remove that excess sodium or that excess added sugar or anything of that sort.
Mm. And you've mentioned twice now using food to help kids kind of grow their dexterity, to kind of understand the relationship between touch and food. Whereas, I think typically people say, well, don't play with your food, but I love your approach. You're using that actually to teach them.
Yes, 100%. I mean, I am not one for mess. So when my son started learning to eat, it was definitely very difficult for me to get comfortable with that. But that's how they learn, and that's how they become, food explorers and become more adventurous in terms of their eating. So it's definitely important to let your kids get messy, touch their food. And you're going to see it's going to help a lot with them being picky and not wanting to be dirty. And that's how they learn to eat, by touching and feeling and exploring.
Yeah, and eating is such a multi-sensory experience. So I love that.
Exactly.
So you did mention the recipe that you have. There's some other questions that are coming in. We definitely have time. We will reserve time for them for the end, but I want to make sure
Sure.
that we have time to get through all of the great slides you've prepared. So tuna salad.
Tuna salad. This can be with tuna, with salmon. Actually, one thing I do want to mention about canned salmon, a lot of you will find that canned salmon comes with bones, and that really grosses people out for some reason, but those bones are edible and they are delicious and they are healthy. They
Really?
have tons of calcium in there. And as an adult, I say get calcium wherever you can, because a lot of us are not drinking milk and we're not eating cheese the same way our kids are. There's tons, they're soft, you break them in, you kind of just mash them up with a fork. And they're really, really healthy. Again, they have tons of calcium. And it's a great way. And the salmon itself has tons of omega-3 fatty acids. So it's just a really, really healthy protein. It's a really healthy option if we can get that. So again, for this tuna salad recipe, you can use some canned salmon. Again, get with the bones, you're getting that extra calcium. Here I have a very, very simple recipe for tuna salad, but I just didn't want to overwhelm everybody with how many vegetables I put into mine. But you can put really pepper, red pepper, olives, you can put it in there for a nice healthy fat. You can put, people put pickles, you can put cucumbers, you can put some white beans in there. Like I said, I'm going to use this word a lot. It's a great, great vehicle for packing in these nutrients. Another really great substitute for mayonnaise, most people put mayonnaise in there. Again, there's a lot of misconception out there about mayonnaise. There's a lot of differing opinions. I am of the opinion that it is okay. But Greek yogurt, substituting mayonnaise for Greek yogurt is a really great option. Again, we're getting some calcium in there. We're getting some vitamin D in there. It's a great, great substitute for mayonnaise. It doesn't really mess with the taste too much at all either. So if you're up for, trying something a little bit more adventurous, it's a great option.
That's smart. That's very smart. A lot of smart tips here. And I love that you can do this with something other than tuna. You can do it with salmon. So it gives you some couple options.
Yeah.
Let's talk about buying in bulk, which I think is really key right now because of the pandemic. A lot of us now are making fewer trips to the grocery store because we're just making fewer trips outside in general. So when it comes to buying in bulk, what are the things that you should focus on that are going to keep well? Because if you buy a lot of it, you then have to store it for much longer.
Yeah. So this slide or this topic, I think is very daunting to people, especially who live in New York City apartments or who live in homes with not a lot of storage. So I definitely don't recommend, going and buying everything under the sun in bulk. Like don't buy, the big Costco size cream cheeses and the big Costco size butters and everything like that. If you don't have the space for that. If you eat that stuff every day or multiple times a day, sure. But things, if you take a look at the shopping list on the side, you'll see things like nuts, seeds, oats, rice, dried beans, lentils, dried fruit, prepackaged drinks and snacks, for your kids or whatever it is. Those are good things to have on hand. And this is more for a cost savings perspective. For example, in my house, we have a ton of we make a lentil soup every single weekend. So we use a ton of dried lentils. We use dried beans. We also use a lot of rice in our house. So these are things I like to buy in bulk because you end up saving so much more money down the road. Even if you're thinking you're saving $1, $2, $3, at the end of the month, that's a huge savings. So, if you look at the details there, you really are you're getting a bigger bang for your buck. There's lower prices, obviously the same nutrients. They last a long time. They're great for families that use these products a lot. And there's a bunch of value stores you can go to and buy these items in bulk and, just as delicious. And, some of these items I've mentioned we can use in different snacks like trail mix. We can use nuts and seeds and dried fruit, snacks, soups, as I mentioned, lentil soup, stew, salad. So really the same way that we're using all of the other methods. We can really use anything that we buy in bulk. But again, I don't recommend going and taking this shopping list if there are certain items you just don't use. But if there are items you do use, like oats or rice or beans, whatever it is, I would 100% recommend doing it because it can make a big difference in terms of cost.
And when you buy in bulk and you bring it home, do you then store it in smaller containers that are like a little easier to access?
Yes, exactly. So rice, oats, all of those go into little like OXO like plastic containers. They make glass containers, plastic, whatever, whatever works for you. You don't have to do that. It definitely stays better and stays a little bit more fresh. But that's up to you. However you want to store it. I personally do store it that way. Nuts and seeds also are great to store in the freezer. They store really nicely in there if you want to put them into smaller bags or into smaller containers in there if you have some more space. So definitely, I definitely recommend, going through things, seeing what your family uses a lot of, and then start buying that in bulk if you dare.
If you dare. You mentioned that the containers, the kind of the storage containers. Is your pantry incredibly organized?
No,
Because food is your
no.
life. It's not.
My mom is probably watching this now and like laughing because it's so not organized and she's seen it. Um, it is not that organized. I try, but
Yeah, but as long as long
I'm
as
in
the
there all
right food
day.
gets in those little tummies, that's all
Exactly.
that matters, right?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
okay, so one of the recipes that you have related to these bulk dry items is lentil soup, which is one of my favorites and a really great source of protein.
Lentils are a great source of protein. So again, I didn't want to overwhelm you with too many ingredients here. So this is a very, very basic lentil soup. But when we make our weekly lentil soups at home, we clean out the fridge. So we put in really whatever we can find. So we have tons of herbs that we have left over in the fridge, like dill or parsley. We put in, if we have some leftover kale or spinach, leek, celery, carrots, onions, anything that you have that you want to put in there. Soups are the best vehicle for really bringing in a lot of nutrients and packing that up. So it's a really great way to do that. Again, I didn't want to overwhelm you with too many ingredients because I do want to show you that they can be simple, but they can be simple. And lentils alone are a great source of protein. So if you just decide to make it really basic, like this recipe, I definitely recommend. This is a very healthy recipe.
And I often see in recipes that people are soaking things like lentils or beans, which to me always turns me off a little bit because I'm like, oh, it's a complicated step. So do you need to soak lentils before cooking them?
So typically I do. I do. Sometimes you will actually find little bugs, especially you sometimes will find little bugs. I definitely like to soak my lentils, barley, things like that. But you don't have to soak it for a long time. It's really more a rinse. You can put them in the
Okay.
strainer and really rinse them. You can even put them in the pot and kind of rinse them and then, put it through a strainer and then do it again, whatever is easier. But I would recommend to do it. Yes.
Okay, well that's helpful to
Yeah.
think of it as rinsing instead of
Yeah.
soaking. That helps me
Yes.
a lot.
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Whatever helps us mentally.
this next one is fantastic. Organic isn't everything.
Mhm.
And then you have on the side the Dirty 12 and the Clean 15. Explain this.
So I have a lot. So this doesn't actually really like fully go into this little lesson, but I have so many people ask me or tell me, if I'm not getting organic, then like why should I eat it? It's not as healthy. And I just really want people to know that that's not true. And organic isn't everything. And you will meet many dietitians who agree with me, and you will meet some who they don't necessarily disagree, but they definitely try to push organic. But I just really want everyone to know that organic is not everything. And you're still getting those same nutrients. You're still getting those same nutrients, which is the most important part, right? So the dirty 12, the clean 15, what that's really saying is that the dirty 12, those are what they say are the dirtiest when they come, from the soil. And that's what we should, if we can be, getting organic. What I tell people is that if there is a small discrepancy in price, then do it. If it's a few cents, sometimes you'll see that where it's like, a 20-cent difference or something like of that sort, or you make whatever price difference works in your head. If that is something that you can justify, then do it. If you can't, then buy the non-organic. You are still getting that great nutrition out of that fruit and vegetable, and don't think you're not eating healthy just because it's not organic.
I love that because it kind of it feels freeing,
Hmm.
because sometimes there's this pressure to get everything organic. And I think if you know, if you have the knowledge to understand, okay, what is really important to get organic and what things are not as important,
Hmm.
I think it frees us up a little bit. So that's
Yeah.
why I appreciate that so much.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of people, I really put it in here just because I think I get so many questions about it, and families that I've worked with in the past have mentioned this, and it's expensive. It's expensive, and it's definitely a high cost if you're when we're looking at in terms of buying groceries. And if like we can't do it, we don't do it. And I don't want people to think it's not healthy just because they're not eating organic. So I thought it was important to throw in there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's very, very helpful because we want the best for our families. And so
Exactly.
to be able to shed some of that guilt is nice. Deals, deals,
Exactly.
deals. We love saving money. What are the deals?
Yeah. So people kind of like the buying in bulk. People find this a little bit daunting only because they think of deals and they think of coupons, and it's a little bit more time investment up front, right? Because sometimes we have to look in different stores to see what different deals they do, and finding coupons, there's some searching going on there. But really, these small like price differences, like, $2 off, $1 off, at the end of the month, this is going to save us big. So it's really important, I think, if it's something that's worth it for you, really to go out there and do this. Take a little bit more time up front to find these coupons. We can find them in local newspapers. A lot of the time when you walk into the grocery stores, you can see it. If you have, two grocery stores nearby, see which one's having a better deal on produce or on protein. Do a little bit of due diligence because it can really help with savings. Also, just some other tips in terms of like saving, buy what you need. We don't want to go in. Sometimes we go into the supermarkets and we're just like browsing the aisles, and we end up with that happened to me today. I went in for three things and I ended up with a full cart. I'm like, I did
Doesn't
not
that happen
listen to
every
my own
time?
advice. Another good tip is don't go to the grocery store hungry. Always have a snack before, because then you really end up buying things you don't need.
Right.
Again, we want to shop in value stores if we can, if it's feasible for us. Make a shopping list and try to stick to it. That's also a great way to make sure we're not overdoing it and that we're not overspending. And all of this should really help us start saving money, which is the goal.
Absolutely. Save money and save time. I
Yeah,
remember as a kid, once we were in the grocery store behind my next door neighbor, and he had 1 gallon of milk on the conveyor belt. And my mother said, how does he do it? How does he have the discipline to come into the grocery store and just get
I
the
know.
one thing that he needs? Because
It's
that's
true.
actually really hard.
I know. It's great. It's really great. Sometimes I see that. I mean, listen, since I've started really making shopping lists, it's been a lot easier for me. But if you don't have one, I mean, you'll just end up with uh,
Yes.
a lot that you don't need. So it's a great tip.
It's a great one. Yeah. And then online shopping, which is really big right now, again, with the
Yeah.
pandemic. It has exploded. There are more ways to get your food online than ever before. I know a lot of people have concerns about the quality because, they want to touch their produce and pick the
Mhm.
perfect one. What are your tips for online food shopping?
So I really wanted to add this because, as you mentioned, Mara, I mean, it's become popular over the last few years, but it has exploded definitely now during the pandemic. And if any of you were food shopping in the beginning in March and April, you know that, I mean, getting a slot, you had to wake up at midnight or 2 in the morning to get
Yeah,
yourself a
we
slot.
literally did that.
So
We would set the alarm.
us too. So we all know it's definitely become really, really popular over time. So I just wanted to kind of go through the pros and cons. Again, this is a really personal decision. This is something really individualized to each family, but I wanted to go through some of the pros and cons, and I'd love to hear, during the Q&A, or if we have time after this slide, if any of you have some other pros or cons that you can add, because I love to learn that. And I've been speaking about this a lot lately. So some of the pros are, obviously, now we minimize COVID exposure. So for people that are really at high risk, this is a great pro. This is a benefit. It's, we're able to plan ahead. We're able to have that shopping list and really stick to it. It's a time saver for sure. Potential deals we can see a lot more quickly because, you know, you go onto some of these sites and right there it says deals or sale, and it's just it's right in front of us. It's convenient. In store, sometimes items become unavailable quickly. A lot of the times these sites will say, well, this is unavailable. Do you want this instead? So it will kind of help us, you know, do that and get the things that we need more quickly instead of thinking it's just not available. And we don't impulse buy as much. In terms of the cons, many of them have delivery fees. I have not found one that does not have a delivery fee. And if it doesn't have a delivery fee, it's because you have a subscription fee, which can also be expensive. So sometimes there's a subscription fee and a delivery fee. Sometimes there's just one, but there's usually one or the other. There's also potential markups in items, and I've seen this. I live right near a grocery store, and I've seen, you know, the price to be remarkably lower in the store than they are online. So that's definitely something to just keep in mind. You can choose the produce, as Mara had mentioned. I think it's not as enticing. Ooh. Sorry, I don't know what just happened. 1 second. Hold on. Okay. Sorry about that. I don't think it's as enticing nowadays to I don't think it's as enticing nowadays to go and to choose our produce and to hold it and touch it. But I do think that's definitely a con because people do like to go and make sure they're getting it at the ripeness of their choice. And there's also rigid time slots. As I've mentioned, you know, earlier in the pandemic, it was almost impossible to get slots, but there still are time slots. So you're kind of working within their slots instead of you working in ways that work for you. So that's, you know, that's definitely something to consider.
Yeah. But it's an option. So we
Yeah,
have,
it's totally an
we have
option.
options.
And I just wanted to put these on. If the pros, you know, if these benefits outweigh the risks or, you know, vice versa, then this is a totally, you know, a personal decision. It's an option. It's a great option. There are a lot of pros with gross online food shopping. So I just wanted to lay both of these out for you so that, you know, everyone can make the decision that's best for them and their families.
I love that. So let's get to some questions. We have a lot of
Sure.
questions. We have a lot here, and we also have some that were submitted in advance. And I
Okay.
want to try to get to as many as we can. So I'm just going to go through the list.
Sure.
So the first one here is, what's a healthy alternative to serve with salmon or fish other than rice? So a
A healthy
non-rice seafood pairing.
Sweet potato. I love sweet potato. It's great. You know, you can do regular potatoes as well. I always am of the view sweet potatoes do have a little bit more vitamins and minerals. It's very high in vitamin A. So anytime we can get, you know, as many nutrients as possible, why not? Sweet potato pairs really nicely with seafood. So I would
That's
recommend.
That's a great one. I eat sweet potato literally with almost every meal, like a little
Yeah.
bit, like probably so over the course of a day, I probably have one whole sweet potato.
Yeah.
But I just find it's like the perfect carb pairing with
It
everything. It
really
just
is.
keeps me
And it's so
full
delicious.
and
Yeah.
it's so yummy. Yes, I'm with you 100%. Okay, this is not me, I'm reading the question. I had COVID about 2 months ago and lost ability to smell and taste for a few weeks. Thankfully, I have recovered. I'm happy to hear that. And those who are dealing with this, how do you recommend those who have to deal with this and maintain a healthy lifestyle for a temporary loss? So if someone has lost sense of smell or taste, or they're just getting it back, and I actually have a friend who's going through this right now. She's miserable. She said everything feels like rubber in her mouth. Any suggestions for things that maybe are good texture wise, even if you maybe can't taste or smell that great?
I would say that the texture wise is going to be the most important because we want to make sure that we're eating and we want to make sure that we're not, you know, that we're not going to be nourishing our bodies just because we can't taste it. So I think texture, you mentioned the texture part, and I was going to touch upon it. I think that's going to be the most important thing. If somebody's going to put something in their mouth, even if it's healthy, but the texture is going to make them just completely nauseous or just not have any of that not have any like want or desire to continue eating that, then I don't think there's a need for that. I think really what's going to work for you, what's going to keep you nourished, is going to be the most important thing. And like this person mentioned, it's usually temporary, thank God. So whatever temporarily is going to get you through something that seems like a big annoyance, I say that's the way to go. And if you want to try to maintain a healthy diet, do that. And if it's working for you, great. And if it's not, then try to look for some foods that just make you feel better. It's all about making us feel better and making us happy.
Yeah. This is a great one. Can you cover some cooking and savings tips for senior singles? So in addition, we've talked a lot about families, and particularly families with young kids, but if we're talking about seniors, do you have any specific tips for our moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I would say pretty much all of those tips that I spoke about during this webinar will work for seniors, will work for singles. Definitely the cans, definitely the frozen. Maybe you don't have to buy in bulk as much because smaller quantities may hold you over a little bit longer. But maybe not. Maybe there are certain things you eat daily, such as beans or lentils or something of that sort, and you may want to go out there and buy that in bulk. But it's for sure going to be the same tips that I would say. I think this works really unanimously for everybody.
And in terms of, I wonder if you have any thoughts on, my mom she loses weight. She's without trying. She needs to keep her weight up because she's, elderly. So she drinks a lot of those Ensure, and those kind of calorie dense drinks. Is that something that you recommend? Do you like those as a supplement?
For sure. And that's definitely something, doctors will continue to recommend, especially to patients of theirs or clients of theirs that have trouble gaining weight or that are continuously losing weight. And we see a lot in our older populations that they are on Ensure or Glucerna or whatever type of shake there is, because there's a lot of calories in there. And especially in the older population, it's really important that we don't see any muscle wasting and we don't see any weight loss or unnecessary or unwanted weight loss for that matter. So keeping up with those shakes are definitely something that I recommend. A ton of doctors will recommend that. Working in the hospital settings, you'll see those prescribed all the time to patients, especially those who are, starting to become malnourished or starting to lose unwanted weight.
Okay, festive events. So ideas for festive events in addition to kind of your Tuesday night meal. So tips for entertaining on a budget and also making sure that you're not straying too far from your nutritional goals.
So that's a good question. I would agree that I'm going to say to use these same tips. Obviously, when we are entertaining, a lot of the times we want to, a lot of the times when we're entertaining, we want to kind of, we have guests that we want to kind of show off to or whatever it is. So we may be making more, in which case it's going to cost more a lot of the time. And we have to just keep that in mind and be cognizant of that. But there's no reason that we can't use frozen fruits and vegetables. If you don't want to use canned because you think it doesn't look as nice or it's not tasting as nice, fine, but you can. There's plenty of recipes that you can use canned produce for, or canned items for as well. So, I'm not sure if I'm 100% understanding that question, but I think that just being cognizant that when you are going to host, you're going to host a dinner party or whatever it is, it may be a little bit more costly, and just know that offhand, and try to do as much as you can to really make it, not so costly. So, buying things in bulk, if we're going to have, a ton, obviously now, not many people are having large dinner parties, but if we're going to be making a recipe that needs a lot, or we're cooking for a lot of people and it's going to need a lot of this, a certain ingredient, then it's definitely a great tip to go buy that in bulk. You're going to end up saving money instead of buying, 6 small packets of something.
That question actually made me a little sad because I miss entertaining so much.
I
can't
know.
wait till we get back to that. How about travel? So there's a question here about and I think I know Ebony. Ebony Williams is a common name, but I know an Ebony Williams. So if this is the Ebony I know, hi Ebony, because she travels an awful lot. So that's why I'm thinking this question is for her. Any tips for someone who is always in a hotel? So you have limited appliances. So even if you want to cook for yourself, what you can cook is very limited, but she still wants to stay healthy.
Sure. I mean, travel there, there's nowadays, I think health is something that's really important to so many people. And I think, if you are staying in hotels, a lot of the time you have a room service menu, or there's a hotel restaurant and there's a menu. And there's always something in there that we can find that's a healthier option. And that actually brings me to a topic that we're going to be speaking about in April, which is a little bit different, but kind of on the same page, where we're going to be talking about just finding some healthier finds in the corner store. So if we do have two options, right, and they may both not seem healthier, what is the healthier option? And you're going to have to tune in April to find out my, what I say about that. But there are definitely ways to go, to look at a menu, bring healthy snacks along with you. Things like canned tuna and salmon, they make them in the bags now. Those are great things to bring with you traveling. You can always eat those as a snack or as like a small meal. And again, when you are looking at a menu, there's always something that's going to be a healthy option, or a healthier option for that matter. And it's just about understanding and knowing what that healthier option is.
I love that tease to the corner store segment.
Yeah.
That was a TV worthy tease. Well
done. So that's in April, but we still have one in March, which I will talk to you guys about before we go. We have a few minutes left. So if there's another question, we can answer.
Why don't we do three more?
Yeah.
You okay with 3 more? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
How do you react to your son not eating his food? My kid is 3 and won't eat vegetables. What do I do? I fight this fight every single night. Please help. That was my insertion, that I fight this fight every night.
that is it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating. And as somebody who has learned a lot about this, I try really hard not to get frustrated, but ask my husband or anyone else who's around me a lot. I get frustrated. But the main thing to do is to not get frustrated, and to know that they know what they want, what they don't want, when they're hungry, when they're not hungry. I don't like punishing and saying, well, this is it, so then you're not getting dinner. I don't like doing that. So if my son's just not into what I gave him that night, I usually after a certain amount of time will just give him something that I know he will eat. And that certain amount of time should not be really more than 15 minutes. You don't want mealtime to be so long, because they actually start to lose interest. And that's the last thing we want. So definitely my main recommendation is just don't get so frustrated, and just kind of know and understand that they really do know what they want and what they like. And yeah.
That's a great tip. Patience is always a great tip when it comes to kids.
It's hard, but
it's hard. They definitely try our patience. This is a great question about milks. Do plant-based milks like almond and oat milk still provide good amounts of calcium?
So a lot of the times, not really calcium, actually. A lot of the times they're fortified with things like vitamin D and some other nutrients, but you don't typically find calcium in those types of milks. But they're great options as, alternatives for people who, cannot stomach milk or don't like milk, have some sort of lactose intolerance. But I would definitely look for other sources of food for calcium, and not rely on those milks alternatives rather.
And the last one, canned goods. So going back to canned goods, do they have less nutritional value? You talked about the frozen being pretty much nutritionally equivalent to the fresh. What about with the canned?
So a lot of the time, it really depends. You can't make a blanket statement no, and you can't make a blanket statement yes. It depends on the item. So like a fruit and vegetable, they typically won't have that same nutrition value for the most part. but it doesn't mean that it doesn't have any nutrition value. And that's the important thing I think to know, is that there is still nutrition value to them. So if that's your option, then go for it. But things like beans and, chickpeas and things of that sort, and obviously tuna and salmon, like those proteins, then yes, their nutrition value is pretty much the same.
That's great. Thank you. Do you have any kind of closing words of wisdom? This is so comprehensive, so much good information.
Thank you. So I just wanted to really leave you guys off, sending you to my website, which is fairmeals.com. We actually are now a nonprofit, as I've mentioned, and we do have a place for you to donate if you're interested. Obviously, this was a free webinar, but we always welcome donations. But go there. There's tons of great resources, tons of great blog posts and recipes. And a lot of my recipes are great recipes to follow, but they're also great recipes to kind of jog our memories a little bit and kind of just inspire us to go a little bit further with them. That's how I kind of like to create my recipes, just as guides. And then obviously follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube. We have some videos up as well. So I really wanted to thank all of you. Again, we have another webinar coming up March 18th, where we will be talking about kids in the kitchen. So it's going to be a really exciting and a really fun webinar. And I hope that a lot of you come back and, and tell your friends about it. And really, I thank all of you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. This is such a
you.
great service to all of us, and just so much good information. Thank you, Ariel.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys.
All right. Bye.